Hello, welcome everyone. It's Anna Nolan here, and I'm delighted to be hosting this event tonight. Thank you all so much for joining us. This event is the third in Sporting Pride's LGBTQ plus Women in Sports webinar series. Sporting Pride's aim is to make Ireland's sporting community the most diverse and inclusive in the world, and increasing the visibility of some of Ireland's finest LGBTQ plus athletes. And that's just one element of their work. Dublin Pride are also delighted to partner on this event as they work tirelessly to promote LGBTQ plus visibility in all walks of life. We believe that elite level athletes like Nicole Owens are leading the way for others to be their authentic selves, and hearing her story will hopefully help others in sporting circles to feel more comfortable with their own sexuality and life experiences. Nicole herself is a Dublin Ladies Football player, a 4 times Ireland champion, and an advocate for positive mental health and self-acceptance. Nicole has spoken very openly over the years about both her sexuality and her experience with depression. She shares her story in the hope that others who struggle to accept themselves as they are or struggle with their mental health will see some light at the end of the tunnel and reach out for whatever sport they need. That's the introduction. Hello, Nicole. How are you doing?
Good, Anna. Thank you for that. That was much more eloquent than I would have summarised myself.
Good. Just before we chat, I'm going to say to everybody, we're a little glitchy tonight. I think myself and Nicole, I certainly am. My feed, if that's the right word. Nicole, I think your feed is perfect now. So just bear with us. If you miss anything and you want us to repeat it, throw a comment up on the comment sections. Also, if you have any questions for Nicole, just put them up there as well and I'll ask her them. So first of all, how are you? How's life? Where are you? How are things going?
Yeah, life's same for everyone, I suppose. Life's a bit odd at the moment. I'm in Malahide, where I've been for the last year now. So yeah, a lot of time spent in 4 walls, really, staring at a computer.
Yeah, so you're in Malahide working from home, and has that been really challenging? Are there elements of it that actually suit you and you like?
I think it's been challenging in some aspects, but to be honest, like the work I do, I'm a data analyst, so I spend a lot of time just like really deep in work. So I have actually found a lot of it's pretty beneficial for me because you don't have people chatting in the office, you're not getting distracted by things. But then there's kind of the other side that like I could technically go like a whole day without kind of seeing anyone apart from like my family. And you know, you do feel a bit removed from college. You have to make a bit more of an effort about it. But by and large, like it hasn't been too much of a struggle.
Yeah. I'm the same. I'm working from home, and mainly it suits my personality, and I have enjoyed a lot of it. The only time I think I've found it hard and what I've missed is when you're in an office and it's things are intense, and you can just make one comment to somebody or have a giggle or even throw your eyes up to heaven and the situation is immediately better.
Yeah, no, you have to sort of go out of your way to have a bitch, as it were, if you really wanted to.
I wasn't going to call it that, but that's exactly it.
Yeah.
You have to have it for yourself. I can't believe she wrote that. I know. I'm not happy with that.
Yeah, it's not the same on Google Chat or whatever, but yeah, sure, look, is what it is.
It is, yeah. So, Nicole, I want to go back in time and your sporting life, and I suppose growing up, and the role football played in your life growing up. What was it like as a kid, and how much was sport present in your home life and school life?
Yeah, sport's been a constant in my life since before I even started playing organised sport, and I was like playing on the road with the lads, usually playing soccer. But ever since I started playing GAL when I was about like 4 or 5, I played the whole way up until now. It's always just been something that's there. It's pretty good structure for me. But kind of when I was younger, I would have played pretty much every sport. Would have played everything in school. Would have been on all the school teams. And then would have kept playing soccer and GA at quite a high level, but was always, I think, better at GA and I think enjoyed GA more. So that was kind of the one I kept up.
And was there other sporting family members? Was sport part of the household?
My parents are from Howth, so actually my parents both sailed, so it's pretty far away from GA, and they weren't. Neither of them really played kind of team sports, as it were. So I was kind of the first. I'm the oldest in my family. I have a younger brother, who also played a lot of GA. But I was the first kind of really active sports person in my like close family. And I think it was kind of a thing that initially my mom was almost surprised that I wanted to play GA, particularly because at that time it was all boys. It was like a nursery of like 100 boys and me. So I think she's kind of apprehensive about that. But yeah, it's something now like they're at all the matches. They come to everything. Like she's proper GA mom now.
Yeah. And did you feel, was there a sense of going against the grain, that you were saying your mother would have associated it with boys or men playing the sport? Did you feel it kind of an outsider, maybe in a cool way, that you were a girl playing it?
Oh, I definitely didn't feel like it was a cool way. Like playing with the lads, like I got on grand with most of them, really well with my team. But like it was still always going out to play with their teams. I played with the boys until I was 12. So like every single time the other team would be like, oh, they've got a girl. And it'd be a big deal, like whoever was marking me. And I was like, yeah, which was like silly. But like I also benefited a lot because I got a lot of leniency off refs. So if it came down to like a scrap or something, like I'd usually get the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, it did make it a little bit sort of onerous going out to play matches and things like that. And especially like by the time I stopped the age of 12, like you're kind of like the lads are obviously developing a lot. The like physical differences were starting to become more evident. And obviously you're kind of growing up at that stage as well. So like I did feel like a bit of an outsider.
Yeah. So kind of talk us through your how you got to the level you are at today. Were there certain people, first of all, who coaches and that who supported you along the way? And then personally, was there a journey that you wanted to be the best? How driven were you with your sport?
I was always, from a really young age, I was always really, really competitive. And that's probably something that like I've relaxed on a bit more recently, but I used to be really, really competitive to the extent that like I was playing soccer and my soccer manager had to be like, you need to stop like yelling at everyone because that's not helping anyone. That's just how much I wanted to win. But in terms of like how I've ended up playing on the Dublin senior team, at the age of 12 when I stopped playing with the boys, I guested to our Portmarnock, which is the next club over from us because we didn't have any girls in their age team. And one of the managers there, Willie Fallon, he would have just like really pushed me and kept pushing me to like, kick my left and really improve all those like technical skills, like foundational stuff. And then there's like under 12s is when the kind of development kicks in for Dublin. So I was 11 going into that. And then I think it was like trials with under 14s that I got called up for, like not expecting me on the team. My parents certainly didn't expect me to be on the team because I was like that year or 2 years younger than everyone else. But I got on the team at that stage and then I played I played like under 14, 16, minor, 21, senior, the whole way up. And I've only had like 1 year where I was away where I didn't play. So it's kind of sort of just part of my life now that I just kind of so used to being there.
Yeah. And it must be a huge part of your life because if you're playing at that level all the way through school, all the way through, adulthood, I suppose. So sport would have been pretty much their kind of evenings and weekends. Must have taken up a huge amount of time.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of the typical thing as people get like maybe late teenagers. It starts to feel like a sacrifice a lot, because this is you're young, you're trying to experience a bit more freedom, and you kind of want to be, you want to be able to go out on a Friday and go out at the weekend. And like our training was always like Friday night, Sunday morning. Like just couldn't have been any like any less suitable for like going out and kind of, I suppose, just having like some of those teenage experiences. But it's certainly something that like the benefits I got from it, like I'd never like at the time I consider it a sacrifice, but kind of it's always given me way more than it like appeared to take from me at the time.
Mm, mm. You've spoken about this before, and it's something I want to talk to you about now again. You're coming to terms with your sexuality. Was this a struggle for you, and why was that the case, do you think?
Yeah, it was a really big struggle for me. I probably, it's kind of hard age-wise, but probably like maybe 13, 14, I kind of started to realize it, but probably didn't accept it till like 17, 18 at least.
Why not?
And I think a lot of like internalized sort of like stigma that I put on myself, combined with, I think, definitely like sort of a less inclusive culture, and sort of maybe general stigma in society, that I had this like massive fear of, you know, not being seen as me, and that played into sport as well. So I just found with teammates and things like that I was worried that people would see me differently and the environment would be differently when I was there. So it was something that I struggled with probably my whole teenage years, and I never talked to anyone about it because that would have meant sort of having to talk about why I was upset.
Yeah. Can I ask, how long ago is that? And I'm asking that because when I came out, it was quite a while ago, 1990, and I really didn't know any LGBTQ people, and there was pretty much, you know, there was Martina Navratilova, I think, and that was it. But for you, so how long ago was that? And did you not know any LGBTQ people, like, or did you? But it still was a difficult thing to do.
So how long ago? I'm 28 now, so it would have been like maybe 10, 12 years ago, a little bit longer. I think it was still like I said, a lot of it definitely was internalized by myself as my own internal fears, but I still feel like it wasn't exactly the most sort of inclusive environment to come out in. Although having said that, like I never had any negative experiences. So that like kind of everyone around me it's just accepted, it's just normalized now. But I suppose at the time, like there would have been kind of little like offhand comments or it's just like homophobic comments that people maybe, you know, it was a bit more naive and immature, you know, teenage years, that people would have made that kind of would have just validated what I was feeling internally. So that kind of meant that I didn't sort of address it.
Yeah. Interesting. Just I'm saying these comments now because they're important, just from Patrick Walsh, Time for Sports fraternity to be more inclusive, and M. Jackson saying absolutely, whether it's in the participatory side or the fan side. They're absolutely right. And like interesting that, you know, you were feeling this, whatever, 15, 13 years ago, in a sporting environment. So it's great that we're having these conversations, and that sporting provider are talking about this. So how did everybody react then when you came out? How did your family react, and how did your sporting teammates react?
I suppose it wasn't a sort of big, I think it was kind of gradual, happened over time. My family, I was out one night. I was like 17 or 18, and I was out one night, and at about 3 a.m, I was in a nightclub called Mangoes, which is like famous in Manhattan, Court area. And I rang my mom at like 3 a.m. or something, like bawling. So like, poor woman, like I got her and I was what she thought had happened. And so she like straight out of bed, like jumped in the car, zoomed to collect me. Like I don't know why I rang her. But I think it was maybe that was like because I'd been something that like I'd wanted to do for so long, was to come out to them, but I just hadn't been able to make myself. So I think it took like a lot of liquid courage. Anyway, she picked me up and I got in the car and she was driving home and just like holding my hand, looking at me, like trying to look at the road, and trying to obviously find out what had happened or if something had happened. I think I just like blurted out I'm gay, and then I think like in all fairness to her, like it was whatever, half 3 a.m. She was just in bed, like she wasn't. I think she was taken aback. She wasn't expecting it. So we had sort of a slightly, I'd say, confrontational conversation about it that night because she wanted to talk about it more, and I didn't like discuss it. which is fair enough, because I think when you've had a lot of time to come to terms with yourself, and then you expect someone that you're, opening up to immediately come to terms with it in the moment. So we kind of butted heads then. I mean, obviously I was drunk as well, so that didn't help either. But then the next morning we kind of talked about it properly. And then, like, in terms of my family, like, my dad just came in the next day and just gave me a big hug, and that was it. So my family was certainly just something that I built up a lot in my head, but like, it was completely fine. And then with teammates, that was pretty tough. I would have talked to some of the girls that I was closest with. And then I just sort of then by osmosis, like, people just knew. And then I suppose it just got to a stage where it was just kind of normalized, and, no one thought anything of it. And I think, like, to be fair, at that stage, like, as I was getting older, it definitely was more inclusive. But it's still, I think, like, a lot of my closest teammates, like, that played in sales and that I'm very close, I think would have been, like, shocked at the time. And I think, like, would have sort of apologized for maybe kind of offhand comments they'd made in the past, not realizing. Which isn't exactly, like, just because then you're like, oh shit, you actually are gay, it doesn't mean, whether I was or not, those comments shouldn't have been made. But I think, like, people realize maybe that the impact of comments like that.
Do you think, looking back then, could things have been in place that would have made it easier for you to come out, especially in the sporting world? Do you think things could have been any different? Even knowing that a team or a club supports, LGBTQ rights.
Yeah, I suppose it's good for it to be sort of normalized and discussed, and not addressed, or, like, sort of in the background. I think that was maybe an element of it. And then there's obviously kind of the wider, like, societal, cultural sort of maybe stereotypes or perceptions that were kind of brought into it. So, like, it's kind of hard in terms of what could have been done differently there. I do think it's kind of a wider thing that, like, sport is just kind of like a microcosm for life. So it kind of was, people were bringing in sort of negative, not even negative, but just sort of learned kind of behavior and ways of being that they maybe didn't question, that sort of impacted without them realizing.
Do you think, how did you feel after you came out? Did a certain amount of pressure lift? Were you mentally? Did you feel, this burden is gone? Was there a more positive outlook on life? How is your mental health after you came out?
Definitely did feel like a lot of weight was off me, and that sort of, this whole part of myself that I felt I was hiding was, I could just kind of be open about it. And it's not that it changed with the way I acted or anything, it just felt like I wasn't sort of, like, gating this, like, particular area of my life. And like, even though, like, it was, like I was saying, it wasn't all in one sort of big dramatic flourish, like, it was over time. So it was kind of the thing that I suppose it also just kind of got easier to tell people, or like to just mention, say, like, oh, my girlfriend or whatever, just in passing, and to kind of just be able to say that without feeling really, really like it was gonna, like, evoke a reaction, or people would react negatively. But it did take time, and now I think it's just something I just don't even think about anymore. Well, that's why I do still think about it, but it's much. Firstly, society's changed, and, like, what people are accepted, and, like, the inclusivity is definitely better. But now it's just, I'm kind of used to it. It doesn't feel like such a barrier or such, like, a big thing to get over.
Yeah. And therefore, it's important, I suppose, to increase visibility, LGBTQ plus visibility in sport. Even today, I think it's really important. Even when I read that, a certain sports person has come out, I think it's really, so important, so invaluable.
Yeah, I think even just from, like, a representation perspective, I suppose it's always a case of people seeing themselves reflected in people that are successful and that are doing well and are excelling in sort of any field. So I think it is one of those things that, like, the more it just is sort of normalized, and it's no longer a case of people having to make a dramatic announcement or like, to come out. Like, to be fair, like the US women's national team, like, have cases where like people haven't come out, they've just sort of, you know, appeared at an event like with a girlfriend or something like that, and that's kind of like, I suppose, breaking down sort of that like need, because I think it's almost like expected, like you need to have this dramatic like announcement, but I think like you're saying, Martina Navratilova, like a lot has changed since then, when that had to be like addressed. I think now it's almost, I feel like generations now, and like certainly like younger generations than me, it's I think the presumption isn't like of complete heteronormative, that everyone is completely straight. I think that's really good that it's changed and people are much more kind of inclusive and accepting.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to move on now to talk to you about something also that you've spoken lots about, and in a really open, honest, you know, genuine way. And it's about mental health. And I suppose I'm interested at the moment, what steps are you taking to mind your mental health around these difficult times? Have you any rituals or daily routines that you use to support yourself?
Yeah, it's obviously harder now. Yeah, we were just saying before this that I haven't left the house today, and that is like step one and like how not to how not to live today's world. But usually there's like, usually I always try and get like some sort of exercise in, whether it's a walk or a session. And the other thing that we've been doing is gone swimming in the sea, which I've like gone through the whole winter, which I've never done before because I haven't been home for it. But even that is just lovely because it's like, it's such a rush of endorphins, similar to you get from like intense exercise. I suppose, yeah, it's kind of balancing, like still getting out and seeing people while like staying like COVID compliant. So like thankfully the weather's getting better, so that definitely helps, because you can like previously like I'd arranged with my friend for a walk, whatever, and then there'd be like a thunderstorm. So I'm like, well, like you couldn't do anything. And
are
the
you
other thing,
sorry, go on, you were going to say one more thing?
No, I was gonna say the other thing I'd like do is read. Like, so obviously instead of sort of, there's no commute now, obviously for work, I just come downstairs. So now it's kind of, I'm trying to like work out time for myself in the morning, usually be a commute, but now like I'll read for like 45 minutes. So that like sort of doesn't mean that you're kind of waking up and you're straight like at the desk. It kind of gives you like some time.
Yeah. And are you more aware of when a challenging period is coming along? I say that because I know I am. There's little telltale signs for me, and one is when I'm not sleeping well. So if so last night I didn't have a great sleep, and I just think, there's something else going. Just be careful now. Tomorrow, just be aware of what you're doing. Don't lose the plot with it. I'm gonna lose it now. But yeah, do you have any little telltale signs these days?
Yeah, probably a few. Like, one of the things that I was like, if I'm kind of going through a bit of a lower period, I'm like quite apathetic. So it's a case of like, I'll just find that I'm, like I said, like I love to read and I feel much better about myself when I'm reading, but I'll find that I'll just be like endlessly scrolling Instagram or something, like, and just not moving. And that tends to, like, if I keep that up, that tends to just really completely like torpedo my mood. Yeah, sleep is a big one. And like, I'm kind of, even if I'm in a great mood and I don't get a good sleep, like it's kind of guaranteed to like shoot me in the back the next day. Which is why I like track my sleep like religiously. Like, the first thing I do every morning is like look at the app to see how much sleep I got and how much deep sleep I got. Which, I mean, you can become overly obsessed about it. But it's like, it's good over time. I can see like trend wise that I'm definitely in much, like, if I'm getting like 7.5+ hours, like I'm definitely in a much better mood. Yeah,
it's funny. I just to say to anybody, if anybody's any questions for Nicole, do write them in on the comments, or any comments. I got one of these and I've become obsessed with it, like a superhero. Numbers, and I become obsessed, and I go, oh my God, I've a fair sleep, 72 last night, and my REM was 7 times during that, and all of that. So but it's a nice distraction, actually. For me, I love numbers, and so doing my Sudokus, and I have them everywhere. I'm turning insane. And then I mark myself, like in school, VG, very good, if I can. God. But these things, I think any of these things are good just to, I suppose, just to kind of take our heads into another place if we feel like we're getting a little down, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a lot easier to slip into it now because like kind of we're saying, you're not like bumping into people like in the office, you're not going out for coffee with like a coworker, you're less likely to meet someone for lunch. You kind of end up like your world kind of is like this like rectangle. And then I think if you kind of on top of that, if you then like close your work laptop and like pick up a personal one, or like you're just on your phone on a smaller rectangle, like that your whole day you can just be spent staring at a screen. And yeah, much as I mean, my mum used to say when I was younger, and I used to hate it, but like it does really affect you. I think it doesn't give you the same sort of like satisfaction than like reading those, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. No, the reading is brilliant. It really is. You've spoken before about your journey to self-acceptance and dealing with the inner critic. What factors supported you the most through both of these processes? Was it family or friends? Talking to professional help, sports, which ones at certain stages were the best for you?
Yes, I suppose it's kind of all of them. But probably initially when I initially suffered from really negative mental health, a lot of it was relationships and people around me. I think it's a big thing, like kind of, even though at the time it doesn't feel like it, realizing that you have people around you looking after you. But I still think one like huge aspect for me, kind of the last like kind of really, really, really low period I had, was properly committing to therapy. And there's kind of a mix of like kind of behavioral therapy and compassionate therapy. And compassionate therapy is like really addressing that internal critic. Because like we all have them. I think especially if you're like playing, for example, sport at a high level, like that's kind of the perfect time for like your inner critic to come out and like completely constantly remind you made a mistake, or kind of instill like fear, or lack of confidence. So it can be really negative a lot of the time, good sometimes, but really again when I need it at least. So like the compassionate therapy really taught me to just reframe the way that I spoke to myself, and a lot of us don't even realize we're doing it because it's internal. But if you actually tune in on what that voice is saying, and then sort of compare that to how you would speak to a friend in the same situation, like you'd never speak to someone like that in the same way. So it just means you're kind of aware of it, and then you can start sort of curbing that. Because we all have like negative patterns of thinking, or different ways that we deal with kind of issues. And you can change that, and you can develop it over time. And it's certainly something I'm by no means perfect at, and it's still like, but it definitely is something that like even with like kind of my cruciate injury and stuff, it would have really helped sort of having gone through that and not seeing that as such a roadblock.
Yeah.
Not such a big roadblock.
Yeah, no, the inner critic is something that I think everyone just needs to keep an eye on. And I'm loving at the moment how important self-compassion and compassion therapy is. I think everybody needs a little bit of that at the moment, because we're all incredibly hard on ourselves. I think even these times when it's not our fault.
Yeah, like there's a global pandemic, like.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a question here for you. A question for Nicole. Were you nervous the first game away from Dublin, whichever game that was, with the county that home fans, whoever they were, would give you abuse because you were out as a player? This is a brilliant question. And did you have any idea how you'd deal with it in advance? Have you been taunted and have people shouted?
No, it's something that it's a big facet in the men's game, but like sledging like from players or sort of like abuse from fans isn't touch wood, like just isn't present to the same extent in the women's game. So no, I haven't really, apart from like if you fail someone, like people getting on your back and things like that, but it's not like I've never been lucky enough. There's never been like significant like fan abuse or like homophobic taunts or anything.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, it's a completely different thing in the male game, and we were chatting the other day, just what male sports team players have to put up with fans, and that's why I imagine the idea of coming out as a male elite player is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, I think it's probably like lingering like stereotypes around like masculinity that are sort of infusing in on that. And there's like obviously a wider cultural societal reason that like a lot of male players don't feel comfortable. Well, I assume don't feel comfortable coming out if there aren't kind of, out male players in any of the professional leagues, like whether it's in America, in the UK or here. So yeah, that is kind of one area that like I think it's probably tough if you're like a young boy growing up, and you're not seeing sort of that representation amongst like your sort of idols.
Yeah, absolutely. So training and sports and the team getting together and matches and all of that. Where are you at the moment?
We're not allowed to do anything. We lost. So for some reason, I know GAL was counted as an elite sport. Or we were counted as elite athletes in the last lockdown, the last level 5. But apparently it was an exemption, and they haven't given us the exemption this time. So
that's sort of I don't like that. You're exemption from the elite. Okay, now you're really not elite. You're not going out to play.
Well, yeah, I suppose it's more a case of like we're all like we have a good few like healthcare frontline workers on our team. Like we're also in the community. It's not a case of like professional athletes where we can go into a bubble. Like we're so far from that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's just meant it's something same as anyone else is doing. Like we have sessions to do at home, runs to do. Like it's still all very much sort of like individually driven. Which is tough because even last year, like obviously when the Ireland was great and getting to play was great, but you kind of a lot of the really positive aspects of being involved in the team were removed because we couldn't, there was no hanging around before or after training. We're all in different dressing rooms, you're in, you're out. So a lot of that sort of like camaraderie and all the kind of other things around the actual matches that kind of really like build a team, a lot of that was taken away. So it was weird. So it'll be interesting to see what happens now the rest of the season.
Yeah, I imagine then it'll be tough to get the motivation up again and the fitness level up again. That's a whole particular training period, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's kind of a tough thing given that like there's now obviously you'd taper, you'd have a preseason, you'd taper towards the league and championship because we don't know when anything is going to start. We sort of have to keep like a certain level of fitness. But also not overdo it because like you can't be going hell for leather the whole time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the challenge.
Yeah. So we've just a couple more questions here from me. If anyone has any from you to Nicole, write them down. So future plans, what's sporting wise, what's going to happen over the next couple of years, or what do you see yourself doing?
Hopefully staying fit and healthy and kind of playing at a high level. Last year I was just come back from my ACL and I had like the most unbelievable unlucky returns. I was like constant injuries, so last year wasn't all that enjoyable. So I think just being able to play and compete and train at the best of my ability, that's kind of my focus at the moment. So trying to do as much, like the one good thing about all this time off is like being able to do a lot of like prehab and sort of kind of trying to undo the damage of however many years it's been so far.
Yeah. I see a question here. What do you think about inclusion of trans women, both from fairness on the pitch and human inclusion in the team environment perspectives? I think we are considered now as lesbians were 30 years ago, unfortunately. Well, I think absolutely trans women should be included in women's sports, and I think it's up to everybody, but also the sporting organizations to address this. You know, there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of discussions to be had, and yeah, I think it's a really important issue that needs to be dealt with people and the sporting organizations in particular at the moment. I don't know if you have any thoughts. That's what I think.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would definitely think that whatever gay or lesbian rights definitely have, and not even rights, but like kind of cultural norms and acceptance are still definitely a way ahead of transgender people. And I think kind of sport is seems to be one of those sticking points for a lot of people, which is ridiculous. I think a lot of the sort of like governing bodies of different sports haven't exactly covered themselves in glory while trying to manage it. So I think it's just a case of that people feel comfortable, kind of whatever sport they're playing, whatever environment they're playing in, and that's sort of the onus is on all of the sporting organisations to make it as inclusive a place as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. A few questions here. Did you get any offers from ALFW, and would you go? Hell yes, as you. No, I don't.
No, but do. I mean, obviously a few of the girls from Dublin are over there now, and there is like obviously playing GAA, like we're not professional athletes, we've got a career, like it's a part-time gig. So obviously the experience or the opportunity to be a professional athlete would be amazing. And obviously to go to Australia would be nice as well. But no, to be honest, personally it's a crazy game and I don't think I'm built for it. I don't really feel like getting battered around for 6 months.
Is it incredibly tough? I know there was a particular injury recently. I've forgotten the athlete's name, but is it tough?
So ladies Gaelic here is technically non-contact, non-voluntary contact. So if you accidentally bump into someone going for the ball, it's fine. And it's full contact, full hits, and from what it seems like, completely off the ball. So it would be a challenge, but I think like obviously my life's here, and my career outside of football is here. So I don't know. I mean, I'd never say never, but like it would be.
Yeah, she's not interested. If anyone's listening, unless it's $1 million a week. So that was from Garvin, and then Grania. I'm sorry, the previous question was from Julia and Grania McLaughlin. Why do you think it's more acceptable in women's Gaelic? There's probably a lot more gay women than men playing, but it's still so much more of a taboo topic in men's GAA. Sad to see. I think we've kind of discussed that I think it's more difficult for male sports people to come out.
I think it's just it's something that there definitely are more people who identify as gay in women's Gaelic, certainly. And I don't know why that is, but it's definitely a case that maybe there's people kind of playing within the male code that don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
There's a lot of strands of that.
Yeah. Eve O'Toole says, what would you say to people suffering with mental health? Who should you approach and what should you do? Well, maybe if you could give them a first step, from your own personal experience, what was your first step?
So my first step was kind of two parts. One was talking to my girlfriend at the time, and one was talking to my mom. But I suppose in either instance, it was just talking to someone. Because a lot of it I just kind of bottled up and had for years. So like the first step was very much talking to someone, no matter like who it is, because like everyone has been through, even if not the extent that you're going through, everyone has been through a period where they've needed support, and then so it's something that it depends on your GP and what relationship you have with them. But I was very lucky that the GP I go to in Malahide was brilliant. So I went to her, and then for me, like I'm quite like an actionable person, quite analytical. So it was a case of like getting things in place then. So like, going on medication, going to talk to a therapist, like having like steps. I think like once you feel like you're addressing it, I feel like that does help a lot of it, even if kind of getting to that point does take a long time.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Did you feel any pressure? This is from Joanna. Final question, and then one more from me, and then we're done. Did you feel any pressure because you were a prominent LGBT sports person to be the spokesperson that advocates awareness? Yeah, like, did you just want to be left to play, or was it something that you naturally embraced and you wanted to talk about?
Oh, that's an interesting one, because I think initially my fear was that I didn't, like, I never wanted to be identified as like a footballer, but my biggest fear was that I never wanted to be identified as like the gay one, or to that become sort of my identity. So that was definitely, I think, a factor when I, like, for me struggling with it initially, and that would change people's perceptions of me. But kind of in terms of speaking about it, no, because like, I know sort of when I was growing up, when I wasn't out to anyone and I was dealing with it on myself, like, I remembered like seeing, you know, when people talk about it and people share their stories and people are really open about it, that helped me a lot. So that's kind of my sort of the rationale for me to talk about my story and be open about it, I suppose.
And that leads into my final question. What would you say to your young self who's at that stage where they're just fearful of accepting who they are, telling everybody and what people are going to say about them? What would you say to that person?
I think it's obviously a lot easier looking at it from this side, but I think probably the main thing I would say is that not no one cares, but like, no one cares as much as you think they do. I think everyone is actually more concerned about themselves and how they're perceived than they are about you. And actually, like, people really, it especially nowadays, but it really isn't. It isn't that big a thing anymore. Like, the fact that whether you get with, you know, boys or women or whoever, like, that only affects a very small number of people. But it's not going to affect the vast majority of people in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would just like to thank you for having this conversation with me. I think it is brilliant how open, honest, and genuine, as I said before, you are, talking about your life and your personal life. And I agree with you at the end. It's, you know, I'd be happy talking about being a lesbian for the rest of my life. It's a great thing to talk about. And in some ways, what you're doing, it's an important thing to talk about, because in the sporting fraternity, as somebody said, there's still a lot of work to be done, actually, especially with trans athletes. So Nicole, thank you so much for this, and thanks again to Sporting Pride. And everybody, thank you so much for the questions and for listening. The webinar will be available afterwards on Sporting Pride website and the Dublin Pride YouTube channel for future reference. Okay, I read that very slowly. Thanks, Nicole. Take care.
Cheers.
Mind yourself. Bye-bye.